Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. My name's Everett. I'm involved with social and internet marketing for the Staffing Cooperative, which is all about bringing the purchasing power, the tools, the contracts, and executive resources to small to mid-sized staffing companies that used to only be available to the nationals. Here you'll get to meet the co-founders of the Staffing Cooperative, Dave Reese and Richard Piskey, as they talk to a group of staffing executives and professionals at AST's users group. AST is a lead provider of staffing software. In this first segment, you'll see Dave Reese talking about the idea of schema and how really it's the grid through which we view reality, interpret our surroundings, and make important decisions. In this case, business decisions that have to do with your staffing firm.
Everyone here approaches life, and you're looking at life through your schema. And very often, there is an actual dissonance or delta between the reality versus the way you see things. But what's interesting is your actions flow from the way you see things, not from reality. So we're going to explore that whole idea of schema today and talk about how that actually impacts your daily lives, and especially your business life.
Next, Dave Reese talks about how A players in both sports and business repetitively train to do the right things over and over again to reach the highest level of performance. And he introduces his partner, Richard Piskey, who for the last 30 years has been practicing the right attitude, thinking, action, and instincts as an A player in the staffing industry. From being president of Alston to running some both private and public niche staffing companies in the U.S.
Every profession, there's A players who just repetitively are trained to, and because of the background that they have, because of their personality, whatever it is, they just do the right things over and over and over again. Right attitude, right actions, right instincts. They develop situational awareness, which we were talking about. And the manifestation of that is a different level of performance than another person. For example, these two guys, right? These are what you might call B players, versus Steffi, who's an A player. These are recreational players, right? And they haven't quite developed some of the things that are required, to win the way they should. Sense of Richard's performance spectrum in staffing. He started in '82 with Alston. He was brought into a branch that was losing a lot of money. He came in April, and by the end of the year, that branch had broken even. The next 4 sequential years, he produced 200% growth in that branch. So it went from 1 million to 2 million, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 8. And then he actually got moved as an area person, so he was working and developing other branches. While he was doing that, that meant his branch was grew to $12 million. Okay, he grew the entire southeast region of Alston when Alston was doing $660 million in business. And at that time, the southeastern area that he was over was doing more business than all of the other 3 major regions in the country. So the Southeast was doing more than the Northeast, the Central, and the West combined. Did that include Canada? And that included Canada. Okay. When the company was doing $600 million in business, the company was producing $50 million in EBITDA, and the Southeast was responsible for $40 million. And the reason why I mention that, by the way, again, technically, is so that you understand that it was not just a revenue impact, but even more importantly, it was the way the business was growing. It actually had a significant positive impact on the EBITDA, on the net profit, right? Relatively speaking. So, because we're big, especially with AST and a lot of the work we do, to us we're as excited about what's happening on the bottom line as we are as what's happening on the top line. Okay? So that's a way of background. Now, the reason why I'm giving you that information is I want you to understand the schema, okay, in essence the circuit board, or what I call the grid, that Richard owns. This is how that kind of growth, that kind of performance over 16 years is it's the lens he uses when he views the world. Does that make sense? That's a specific type of schema. You know, you have the A schema, you have the B schema, that's the A schema, right? So what happened was, Rich and I started the Cooperative about a year ago. And for the last 8-9 months, we've had the opportunity to really get into some mid-range, mid-market staffing firms and do some work for them. And what I thought would be very interesting is that at this moment, because this is the moment that we can do this because it's fresh, is interview Richard and ask him through his lens, what are some of the things he's observed in terms of the difference between the schema that he owns, in essence, right, versus what he sees with these mid-market companies.
Thanks for watching the first segment of this web video series. I encourage you to watch the next segment of this web video series, in which Dave Reese sits down and interviews his partner Richard Piskey, and they talk about when Richard was president of the large national firm Alston, what his perception of the small to mid-sized staffing firms was at that time. They'll then fast forward a bit, as Dave and Richard have been working very closely with staffing firms, small and mid-sized staffing firms right now, and talk about some of their observations about those firms that they've worked with, and look at some of the advantages that the small and mid-sized firms have right now over the national firms in this type of economy.